Hi, I'm Laura, and this is the Solo Business Playbook podcast. If you're building a business on your own, thinking about starting to freelance, but feel like you have no idea what you're doing, then you're in the right place. I've taken the non-traditional path from the 9 to 5 into freelancing and now running my own business. And on this podcast, I'm sharing what's actually worked, what hasn't, and everything I'm still figuring out along the way. We'll talk about finding clients, growing your income, and building a solo business that actually supports your life without leaning into hustle culture, and with real stories from other freelancers and founders. So let's get into it. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first episode of the Solo Business Playbook podcast. And I thought I would keep it real this first episode. I wanted to introduce you to the podcast. And if you're watching the video for this podcast, you will see that it's not very glamorous up in here. But I wanted to keep it real because when you're building a business or you're freelancing or you're working for yourself, this is quite often the reality of how it looks, not the polished aesthetic day in the lives that you see on TikTok. So I thought I've been procrastinating for too long to record this episode. So I thought, actually, do you know what? I'm just going to keep it real and I'm just going to record something for you guys. So, welcome to the first episode. I'm so excited to finally be putting this out into the wild. I will be recording a series with loads of different founders building loads of really cool businesses. And I'm so excited for you to hear all of those episodes as they're released. But today, and for episode 1, I wanted to discuss something that I have always suffered from in my personal life, my career. It's definitely getting better as I'm getting older and as my experiences are growing. But I'm sure so many of you are going to relate to this as well. I think it's quite an apt topic for a first podcast, and that is imposter syndrome. Honestly, the more people I speak to, the more I realize that imposter syndrome is so common, and it's something that everyone suffers from at some point in their lives, whether that's business or relationships or even education. In case you've never heard of it, if you've been living under a rock, imposter syndrome is essentially feeling like a fraud in what you're doing. So you might feel underqualified, incapable, or undeserving of particular roles or successes that you may found for yourself. This could look something like wanting to start a YouTube channel but doubting your ability to put it off, or wanting to apply for a new job but feeling underqualified, wanting to start a podcast but procrastinating on it because you think no one's going to listen, or feeling like you didn't deserve something that you achieved. Common signs of imposter syndrome are self doubt, worrying that you won't live up to the expectations, which is something that I definitely suffered with early in my career, anxiety, fear of failure, self sabotaging opportunities, not trying or starting something that you have been thinking about. Sometimes it can look like attributing your success to external factors. So, like, oh, yeah, I got 100% on the exam, but they were easy questions. Sacrificing your own dreams or feelings to please other people, and also frequent burnout. Interestingly, scientists have found that procrastination is not actually caused by laziness, but often serves as just a coping mechanism for fear. So, if you are suffering from imposter syndrome, you might actually find yourself procrastinating a lot and putting off things that you know you want to do or should do. And you're doing that out of fear of essentially like not living up to the idea in your head or the expectations set by someone else. However, on the flip side, some people use imposter syndrome as a source of motivation. So they'll use it as their drive to like constantly achieve more and more and more. But this often, on the flip side, results in anxiety or eventually burnout. And imposter syndrome is rough because I remember how long I put off freelancing for. So I first started freelancing in 2021, at the end of 2021. And I had wanted to freelance for so much longer than that. I just knew that the 9 to 5 wasn't for me. I wasn't quite ready to start a business, didn't really have a business idea, but I was toying with the idea of freelancing. But I was so full of imposter syndrome that I put it off for so long, to the point where I would self sabotage opportunities. I remember signing up to Upwork maybe 2 years before I started freelancing, and would find job postings where I was like, okay, that fits in my job description. I could, in theory, do this on paper. I can do what they're asking someone to do. But once I would apply for the job and the person would reply and say, "Yeah, this sounds great. Let's jump on a call and kind of ask each other some questions," I would ghost them because I was just suddenly terrified at the thought of actually making the leap, because I was, yeah, filled with imposter syndrome. And honestly, this went on for such a long time that I was tiptoeing around the edge of freelancing. And it got to the point where 2 years on and off, I'd been dipping my toe in and then running away and then doing the same thing. And it was only when I first started traveling and working, I was technically still in my old 9 to 5 still. And luckily, my boss at the time didn't care where I worked from. So my best friend and I jumped on a one-way flight to Sri Lanka and then ended up in Indonesia. And it was only once I was in Indonesia and kind of away from everyone at home and didn't have that fear as much that I was like, no, do you know what? I am going to do this. And as soon as I started applying for jobs on Upwork, I heard back from who would, the person that would turn out to be my first ever freelance client. And I remember I was in my friend's apartment in Barcelona, and I was due to have a call with her, this client. And even 5 minutes before the call, I was thinking in my head, what can I say to get out of this? How can I cancel this call? I don't want to go ahead. I'm so scared. And then I thought, do you know what? What is literally the worst that can happen? I still have my 9 to 5 right now. So I'm not taking any risks in doing this call. It's only going to serve as experience, regardless of the outcome. And I forced myself onto that call and ended up with my first freelance client. And then landing my second client after that came a lot easier. Now, this is not to say that my imposter syndrome has gone away. My imposter syndrome creeps up every now and again, especially when I'm doing things for the first time or if I'm doing something that is out of my comfort zone. So things like speaking in front of a room of people, even going to some networking events. If I'm having a day where I'm feeling a bit shy and a bit introverted, my social battery's low, that is where I would also get imposter syndrome. Chatting with people who on paper have achieved so much more than me also ignites my imposter syndrome. Even when it came to this podcast and I started reaching out to other founders to find out if they would be interested in coming on and recording an episode with me, I was so scared to even DM them. Why am I scared to send a DM? But the only way to combat imposter syndrome is to push through and to do the things that you're scared of, because that is the best way to grow. You can't expand as a person by playing it safe all the time, and you can't expect different outcomes by playing it safe all the time. So I thought what I would do is share some of my tips that I've learned over the years of how I battle my imposter syndrome. And it's definitely getting better. I get it much less now. I'm so much more confident in what I do, what I can offer, what my price should be, and just backing myself. But I'm also much more willing to take risks and to put myself out there and put myself in situations that may be uncomfortable, because I've learned just from trying that imposter syndrome is just a fear that lives in your mind. It's not real. So, the first thing that you can do is, firstly, don't be so hard on yourself, because imposter syndrome is normal. And as I've said before, it's something that every single person experiences at some point in their life. There was a TikTok trend that went round a few years ago now that was about talking to your younger self. And I love to do this because I just think we're so quick to forget our achievements and move on to the next thing that we're chasing or the next thing that we're trying to achieve. And actually, if you took a step back and could meet your younger self and they saw your life, how cool they would think you were, and how amazed that younger self would be at even your smallest achievements. So this is the first thing that I love to do, is whenever I'm having a moment of serious self-doubt, I sit back and I think, what would little Laura think of some of the things I've done? She would be amazed. She would honestly be so shocked. The second thing is to allow yourself some grace and realize you're not alone. Like, there was a study done and it found that 62% of global employees admitted to feeling imposter syndrome. 62%. And honestly, like, I think a lot of the remaining 38% just weren't being honest with themselves, because I would expect this number to actually be even higher in reality, because like I said before, so in so many situations, even if you don't get it regularly, I would be willing to bet good money that every single person on the planet has experienced a level of imposter syndrome at one point in their life. The third thing that I recommend doing for dealing with imposter syndrome is to look for the facts and reframe how you look at what you're doing. So instead of reacting out of fear, you need to look at the actual reality of the situation. So for example, let's say that one of your clients has asked you to, if you can help with something that they need that you've never done before. Naturally, your gut would be to say no. Sorry, that's not something I can do. I've never done this before. But actually, everything you've ever achieved, technically at some point in your life, you've never done it before. So when you think about it like that, actually, you can do anything, because, yeah, you could never drive before, but you can probably drive now. You could never record a podcast, but you can record a podcast now. You could never post on social media because you'd never done it before because it didn't exist, but now you're an expert in it. So I'm not saying to jump at opportunities that are obviously way above your technical abilities without at least trying, but don't be so quick to shy away from new opportunities purely on the basis that it's something you've not done before. You should also accept the fact that no one is perfect. Everyone makes mistakes, and sometimes failure is inevitable. Not only that, but failures are a blessing, because nothing teaches you more about life and more lessons than a failure. And I don't mind making mistakes anymore, because if you don't try, you'll never know. And even if something doesn't work out, the amount of experience and learning that you will get from that situation is so worthwhile, because you can then apply it either to try again or probably even to multiple other situations. Another one I think is really important if you are starting out on your own, particularly as a founder, but also would be massively beneficial if you're a freelancer, and that is to find a trusted mentor. And this doesn't have to be an official mentor that you like pay, like a business coach or something like that, but just someone that you trust, that you can confide in, that understands and can relate to your situation or relate to building a business, and also ideally someone you can learn from. And again, this could be a friend, this could be an auntie or another family member, it could be a previous colleague, it could be just someone you know through acquaintances, but anyone you know that you trust and you have a good relationship with, that you feel like you can talk to about new opportunities or doubts that you might be having, and basically just someone that you can confide in when it comes to your business. Another thing that I really love to do, and I cannot recommend this one enough, and it's one of the reasons I've left it until last, because I started doing this back in 2020, and it has genuinely like changed my life, changed my attitude, probably helped me to overcome my imposter syndrome. But that is to keep what I call a success log. And for me, I just have a page in Notion, but you could use like your notes app on your phone, like an actual written journal, literally anywhere where you're actually going to keep it. And all I have is it's separated by year, and it's just a bullet pointed list where I write the date and whatever it is that I achieved. And this can be something as simple as like a grade on an exam, or getting good feedback on some work that you did or from a client, or landing a client that you wanted, or even landing a guest on your podcast that you thought was out of reach, or speaking on stage for the first time, or it could literally be anything. And I've done this for the last 6 years, and I have such a long list. And the important thing with keeping your success log is to even note the tiniest wins, because I feel like we often make a thing about celebrating the big wins. So we celebrate, obviously, weddings, graduating university, birthing of babies, buying houses, businesses being acquired, or selling out your stock for the first time. And while absolutely all of those things are amazing and should be completely celebrated, it's also so important to celebrate the tiny wins, the little steps, because it's the tiny, tiny little day to day steps, day to day habits that you implement that will keep your business moving forward and lead you to the biggest successes. And we don't celebrate those small wins enough. We are so quick to forget them and be on to the next thing. And so keeping this success log is such a good method of reminding yourself what you're capable of. And anytime I have a day where I'm feeling a bit down and I'm feeling like a fraud, or I'm feeling like I'm not that girl and I need a bit of a confidence boost, I will bring up my success log and I will have a little look through at all the things I've achieved over the 6 years, some of which I'm like, that's even crazy. Like, I really didn't think that I was going to land that client, or I really didn't think I was going to get that. And I did. So it's such a good reminder, and honestly, something that I love. And it's also just such a good way to celebrate yourself, because as humans, we don't do that enough. We're so quick to celebrate other people, which again, as we should, but we always forget about our own successes unless it's big and, it's a big societal expectation. Celebrate the small wins, guys. And I promise you, this little success log will improve your confidence to no end. I love it. And I love just looking back at my journey as well. And like, some of my first entries are like university grades and things like that. And then once I started landing freelance clients or increasing my freelance rates and things like that, like just the tiniest wins. And I look back and I'm like, oh, yes, that actually did mean so much to me at the time. And it's led me to where I am now. And finally, this is just a little one to leave you with, because it's an important one. And I've kind of touched on it already, but I want to just say it in a nice, succinct way to end the episode and give you a little bit of food for thought. Whenever I find myself being super harsh on myself, criticizing myself, or putting way too much pressure on, I always remind myself I would not speak to a friend, boyfriend, family member like this. I would be cheerleader number one. I would be full of support. I would be backing them to no end. So if I wouldn't say these things to them, why on earth am I saying it or thinking about it myself? I'm going to keep this first episode short and sweet, so I'm going to end this one here. But I'm very excited for this series, and I really hope that you join me for the next episode because we've got our first guest on, and it's going to be a good episode. I'm so excited about the guests that I've got lined up for this series, and yeah, I can't wait for you to hear the next episode. So that's it for today's episode of the Solo Business Playbook podcast. If you found this episode helpful, it would mean a lot if you followed along or left a quick review because it really helps more people to find the show. And if you're building your own business right now, I'm right there with you. You can find more resources, behind the scenes, and ways to work with me in the show notes. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode.